Let's talk about CIA Director John Brennan, investigator of the investigators, John Durham, fraudster Steve Bannon, and Bill Barr's bogus October surprise. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So let's do a little bit of a hodgepodge, a little bit of a review, because several things have bubbled up over the past day or two, and they all kind of dovetail or they're interrelated. So we're going to talk a little bit about former CIA Director John Brennan and his interview with John Durham, who is the US Attorney from Connecticut that Bill Barr handpicked to try to investigate the investigators and come up with a different conclusion than three other investigations regarding how the Trump-Russia investigation was properly opened, because Bill Barr doesn't like that answer. So a little bit of John Durham, a little bit of John Brennan. Let's talk a little bit of Steve Bannon, and we've got to sprinkle a whole bunch of Bill Barr throughout. So first of all, John Durham was tapped by Bill Barr to investigate the investigators into the Trump-Russia investigation. That's a whole lot of investigating. This has been investigated several times over, right? Robert Mueller investigated it, Bob Mueller, and obviously concluded it was an appropriate investigation because he conducted it and he reached conclusions and he indicted upon a bunch of people, Russians and Americans, right? So the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation were sound. Then various congressional committees investigated the opening of the Trump-Russia investigation, and the congressional committees concluded it was properly opened, not a product of politics. Then the Inspector General for the Department of Justice, Michael Horowitz, investigated the same thing and concluded after a lengthy investigation that the Trump-Russia investigation was properly opened, properly predicated. It was not a product of a political hit job or a witch hunt. Bill Barr doesn't like all of those answers, so he set John Durham out to investigate it all over again and investigate the investigators who investigated Trump-Russia. That's a lot of investigating, and what an extraordinary waste of our taxpayer dollars. What has resulted in all of this investigating of the investigators? Well, one person has pled guilty, a guy named Kevin Kleinsmith. Now, first of all, this was not a product of the John Durham investigation. This misconduct, this crime by Kevin Kleinsmith, an FBI attorney, was actually discovered by Michael Horowitz, and it was part of his report. And he found that the FBI engaged in a lot of missteps, mistakes, and some outright crimes by Kevin Kleinsmith. What did Kevin Kleinsmith, the FBI lawyer, do? He doctored an email to make it look like something it wasn't, and then he provided that information up the chain, and that information made its way into an application for a FISA warrant, a surveillance warrant. That's wrong, that's criminal, and I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat or an independent, or if you're not at all political. If we find anybody in our government, FBI, DOJ, or any other department or component doing that kind of crime, engaged in that kind of corruption, they need to be held accountable, they need to be prosecuted, and Kevin Kleinsmith has pled guilty. But that's about it as of the moment. As of this moment, that's about all that's been produced. Now, there are some other things that we've learned in recent days that help inform where the Durham investigation might be going. So bear with me here. John Brennan, the former director of the CIA, was in charge of the CIA when this counterintelligence investigation into Trump-Russia first got opened and became a thing. So John Brennan was in charge of the whole shebang when it opened up. John Brennan has just been interviewed by John Durham's team, Bill Barr's handpicked US attorney trying to undermine the investigation, for 8 hours. John Brennan was interviewed for 8 hours by John Durham's team. And John Brennan was told, the guy who was in charge when this thing was open, this investigation into Trump-Russia, John Brennan was told, you are not a target of this investigation, you are not a subject of this investigation, you are simply a witness. What that suggests is that the Durham team believes John Brennan did nothing wrong when this investigation was open. Inferentially, that's what it suggests. Now, can I briefly explain what it means to be a witness, a subject, or a target in a grand jury investigation? Let's use a hypothetical that you can really kind of grab hold of, other than counterintelligence investigations. Let's assume you have a homicide committed in a back alley, and there are two drug dealers, and they're involved in a drug deal, and then a third person, a gunman, walks into the alley, kills one of the drug dealers. The other drug dealer is a witness to the murder, robs both drug dealers, takes the money, takes the drugs, and the gunman flees. Okay? The gunman is a target of the grand jury investigation because he committed the murder, and that is who the prosecutors are investigating with a view toward indicting. He's the target of the investigation. The surviving drug dealer is a witness to the murder, but he's also what we would call a subject. Why do I call him a subject? Because a subject in a grand jury investigation is somebody who's committed some crimes, they did some wrong, they have a Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination because he was involved in a drug deal at the time, but he's not the target of the grand jury investigation because the grand jury is investigating the murder. But his conduct is criminal, and he would be asked about that as part of the investigation. And so we would have to deal with his right against self-incrimination that he has by giving him immunity or doing something else. He would be a subject of the investigation, somebody who did something wrong and who might be asked about it, but we're not looking to indict him, we're looking to indict the gunman. That's the difference between a target and a subject. And then what's a witness? A witness is somebody who's in that alley, in their building, looking out their window, and they see this murder go down. They have no exposure, they've done nothing wrong, they have no right against self-incrimination, they're just a witness. They were looking out their window at the time. What we just learned is that former CIA Director John Brennan is a witness. He's that person in the window who was overseeing things but did nothing wrong. That suggests that the guy who was in charge at the time this was open did nothing wrong, he was just a witness, tends to suggest that it was a properly opened investigation, just like Bob Mueller said, just like the congressional committee said, just like Michael Horowitz said. Now, will Bill Barr take that answer? Maybe not. Maybe not. Will Bill Barr announce a great October surprise based on the John Durham investigation? Probably, because he wants to help Trump and hurt Biden. So I suspect we're going to get Bill Barr stepping to the microphone and telling us all these horrible things were found by John Durham. And I, for one, won't believe it. And you know why I won't believe it? Because he did the same thing with the Mueller report. He stepped to the microphone before any of us had seen the Mueller report and said, no obstruction, no collusion, complete exoneration. Oh, happy day. President Trump remains king. And a federal court judge, Reggie Walton, entered findings that Bill Barr lied. Specifically, he said he mischaracterized the Mueller report, he spun the findings and conclusions of the Mueller report, and Bill Barr lacks candor. Let's not fall for it again, folks, when Bill Barr steps to the mic in October with a bogus October surprise that, oh, Durham's findings and conclusions were great for Trump and terrible for Joe Biden. But you know it's coming, so let's brace for it now. What else did we learn about Bill Barr in recent days? Well, we learned that when Bill Barr, I'm shifting topics slightly, when Bill Barr tried to fire or tried to pretend that Jeff Berman, the US Attorney in New York, resigned, remember Bill Barr lied about that, and Jeff Berman the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, said, no, I didn't resign, and I'm not resigning. Bill Barr lied about that and said, well, you're fired. What we now know is that presidential advisor and henchman Steve Bannon was being investigated by Jeff Berman when Bill Barr fired Jeff Berman and tried to install Donald Trump's golfing buddy, Jay Clayton, who had never prosecuted a day in his life, tried to install him as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York to oversee the Bannon investigation. Well, Jeff Berman outmaneuvered Bill Barr. Jay Clayton never made it into that spot, and instead, Jeff Berman's number 2 person, Audrey Strauss, became acting U.S. Attorney and by all accounts has done a remarkable job, apolitical job, honest and ethical job, and indicted Steve Bannon. Did Bill Barr fire Jeff Berman to impact the Steve Bannon investigation? We don't know, but I suspect we'll find out eventually. So he didn't succeed in shutting down the Bannon investigation, if that was his goal, because fraudster Steve Bannon has been indicted for stealing from Donald Trump's base, because Steve Bannon said, I'm going to build a wall, give me all your money, and then he pocketed the money. Unbelievable, these people. But you know what? Bill Barr did have more success in the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, and we learned about that in recent days. So what we learned as part of the Senate Intel Committee, the Republican-controlled Senate Intel Committee issuing Volume 5 of the Trump-Russia investigation report, what we learned in recent days that was reported by Ken Delanian and some others is that last summer, that Republican-controlled Senate committee referred criminal investigations to the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. For whom? For Don Jr., Jared Kushner, and Steve Bannon, and 2 others. The Republican-controlled Senate Intelligence Committee made criminal referrals of Donald Trump's family members to the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office last summer. And what happened after they did that? Bill Barr swooped in and pulled the top prosecutor out of the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. Jesse Liu, my former U.S. Attorney and my former colleague even before that, Jesse Liu pulled her out, pretending to give her a job at Treasury that they then revoked and reneged on, pulled her out as the top prosecutor in D.C. after Donald Trump's family members and Steve Bannon and 2 others had been referred for a criminal investigation for their misleading and lying, depending on who they were, to the Senate Intelligence Committee. That was a referral made by Republicans, a Republican-controlled committee. And Bill Barr pulled the top prosecutor out and installed his own lackey, a guy named Tim Shea. And what did Tim Shea do? Immediately he went about dumbing down Roger Stone's sentencing request, prompting all the prosecutors on the Stone case to walk off the case. And he tried to kill Mike Flynn's case, tank Mike Flynn's guilty plea. That's what Bill Barr's lackey tried to do when Jesse Liu was pulled out and Tim Shea was installed. And now we know that Donald Trump's family members were also referred for a criminal investigation. And who oversaw that? That same Bill Barr lackey, Tim Shea. What happened to those investigations, folks? What happened to the investigations that were referred by a Republican committee to the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office of Don Jr., Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon, and 2 others, Eric Prince and Sam Clovis? What happened to those under U.S. Attorney Tim Shea, who tried to kill other cases against Donald Trump's criminal associates? We need to know that, and we need to start beating the drum about that. It hasn't gotten much play because we're contending with so much else. We're contending with COVID. We're contending with the slowing of the mail by Louis DeJoy, Postmaster General, $1 million Republican donor. We're contending with Mitch McConnell continuing to put unqualified judges on the bench. We're contending with so much. And we're going to defeat it all. We're going to defeat it all because the Republic is too important to give up or to become despondent. Too important. And giving up is exactly what Bill Barr and Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo and company want. Steve Mnuchin. That's exactly what they want. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Justice is coming. And justice matters. Please stay safe, folks. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.